of our next group that were on grid already go back to their paddock spots and change to those wet tires, Brian, because I'm sure when they were all lining up and getting ready for their race, they were probably almost all out on dry tires. So we can see now they're coming out behind the pit wall and getting ready for their pace lap.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're on this pace lap, we've got a little bit of video from yesterday. Bill Styczynski sent it to us. He's a Formula V driver of many, many, many decades. He sent us a little video of his race yesterday. So we're going to look at that while we are doing our grid. So take away with the grids. Then we have a special guest commentator for the entire race with us.
That's right.
So we'll talk with Steve Whitston here in just a few minutes.
All right. Well, tell you what, I'm gonna mix it up a little bit, Brian. I'm gonna start at the front, work my way back, and we'll start with our first of two groups because we are going to have the Formula Vs starting in a second group a little bit further back. Your pole sitter today, finishing second at this year's National Championship runoffs in Formula Continental, and your winner yesterday, it's Robert Aller, starting on the outside of the front row. In his Van Diemen RF01 is Chris Charnow, and then we've got Paul Farmer starting on the inside of row number 2 in his 2010 Radon RN10, and Robert Wright in the number 90 machine. He's in an Elan DP08, and then finally starting in 5th is Mark Deffer in his Van Diemen RF02. All of those drivers in Formula Continental. Starting 6th, and you're driving the number 108 Miguel. It is Jonathan Kotek, multi-time national champion, with Keith Jocelyn, our sole driver in Formula 600, starting 7th. Then we've got John Robinson driving the number 19 machine, and that is a Swift DB06. He starts 8th, with James Morgan in a Formula F Swift DB6 starting in 9th. Then Dan Thorogood starting 10th. He is driving the number 79 Formula F Swift LR23. And then we have our second pack, Formula V. Start off with our winner from yesterday. Our pole sitter in the class is Donnie Isley, driving the number 30 Agitator. And then we've got Ray Carmody, who finished second yesterday. He is in the number 81 Mysterian. He'll start on the outside of the second row. And then we've got Bill Styczynski, who we're watching on camera right now from yesterday's race. Remember, Styczynski was part of that lead pack, fell back almost 3 seconds behind Isley, and Carmody was able to make up that ground. And Brian, we found out the reason why. He had issues with the car popping out of 4th gear and had to physically hold the car in gear for the remainder of the race. And he was able to hold on to 3rd, and he was part of those drivers. All 3 of them were within just a couple hundredths of a second of one another when they crossed the line. And so then starting 4th in Formula V is going to be the number 20 car. That is the Vortec of, that is the let's try it again, the Caruso DBR1 of Jeff Filipkowski. And then finally starting in 5th, driving the number 23 Caracal, it's Russ Fredericks.
All right, so this is the video we've got from yesterday. We're going to keep this up for the remainder of the pace lap so you can kind of see what this track is like. Brian Styczynski, Bill's son, just chimed in the chat. What a great statistic yesterday. 128 years of Formula V experience crossed the finish line within a quarter of a second yesterday. That is basically Formula V in a nutshell, Greg.
Yeah, indeed. And Brian, as the pace car now comes down onto the pit lane, I should mention, we'll bring him in just a few moments. We've got a special guest joining us. That is Steve Whitston. He's driving an FE2 car this weekend, but he and his entire family, his 2 brothers, his father, has been racing Formula V for years, and should be a great asset to us here this morning. We'll bring him in just a few moments as the green flag is in the air, and we've got a race here at Homestead Speedway as Rob Allaire, first of our Formula Continentals or Formula Fs to head down into turn 1.
Yeah, that's turn 1 is very, very treacherous even in the dry, so it's even worse here in the rain, and all of these cars really taking their time to figure out where the puddles are, where the deeper stuff is, and finding out also how they can go off the main line, because of course in most cases when it's wet, the regular racing line is so slick, so they start looking for places where they can get a little bit of grip. And Steve, you can tell us a little bit about that. What's it like, especially in a Formula V, when you've got this kind of a damp racetrack?
Well, it really depends on how much it's raining, right? If there's puddles on the track, it's a lot more difficult, where if it's a drying track, there's a lot more grip. But the Hoosier rain tires are pretty remarkable.
Yeah, so you've been in this Formula V class for a very, very long time. And like I said yesterday, 128 years of experience between a quarter of a second. It's a family in Formula V, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most nights we all go out to dinner together and we spend time together. And, when we put the helmets on and we start racing against each other, kind of all bets off. But as soon as we get out of the car, it's all hugs again.
Yeah. So as we get going through this first lap, we're going to see our cars come across the start-finish line for the first lap. It looks like Robert Allaire, of course, not of course, but as he did yesterday, is our leader at this point in time, followed by John Kotek, Robert Wright, Mark Zeffer, and then Keith Jocelyn in that Formula 600 car is in second place. Is you race with the Formula 600 and the Formula F's a lot. Is the 600 a pretty good platform in the rain like this?
Well, the 600 has a lot of torque. It doesn't have a ton of tire, so I think they have a lot of wheel spin, which doesn't favor the wet.
Sure.
So I would say no.
Got it.
All right, Brian should mention that Paul Farmer, driver of the number 11 Formula Continental Radon, did not make the grid today, nor did John Robinson from Formula F, nor Jeff Filipkowski in Formula V. So it looks like a four-car field in Formula V today for Steve to help us out with.
Yeah, so Filipkowski had transmissions issues yesterday. He ended up pulling early and I think they need to do a full gearbox swap that they ended up not doing. It was pretty heavy rain last night, and they just weren't able to get the car back together, unfortunately.
Got it. So it looks to be, and maybe Brendan, our producer, can confirm for us, it looks like the rain has essentially stopped, and that's good news for definitely the later classes. How long do you think it will take for this track to dry, Steve?
Oh, I'm not really sure. I think the banking with the steepness to it should help. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of wind today, which I don't think would be very favorable. I also don't think there's a whole lot of sun. And it is extremely humid out too, so I would say it's going to take some time.
Yeah, so we'll probably be pretty much wet for this entire race at least.
I would imagine. I see puddles into one, and I don't think those are going anywhere.
Yeah. All right, so Allaire, Kotek, Wright, Deffer, your top four here in Formula Continental. Top four in Formula F is Thorogood, Morgan, Jonathan Kotek's in Formula F as well.
Yeah, he's quite a bit ahead of the rest of the Formula F field, Brian. He's already got about a 25-second advantage on Thorogood, but let's not forget that bright yellow number 108 machine that we just saw going through the infield there. He's running a pretty strong race so far here in the wet.
Yeah, it's surprising also that Formula F car is doing so well in front of the three Formula Continental cars. They should be faster in theory, but he's doing a great job. You must like the rain.
Yeah, Kotek is a fantastic driver, especially in the rain.
Yeah, and Brian, as we were just talking to Steve, and he was mentioning about the torque and having trouble putting the power down. We had just seen Keith Jocelyn, who's coming into the hairpin now, our sole Formula 600 driver, get a whole bunch of wheel spin and have the rear end step out on him coming through turn 5 before. And there you go, you can see it again at the hairpin. He just can't keep the rear wheels underneath him there.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. Russell Fredericks is doing a really good job sticking with Donnie Isley. Donnie Isley's a really good driver in the rain.
Yeah, so you've got Isley, Fredericks, Carmody, and then Bill Styczynski, your four cars in Formula V. And are they all kind of in the same boat here as far as rain experience and trying to stay together here?
Well, I can't say for sure, but I suspect, Donnie is a BMW instructor driver, and he can't make NOLA this year because he's going over to Sweden to race BMWs on the ice with studded tires. So I would imagine that would translate to being good in the rain.
Well, and Bill's from Downers Grove, and they get a little bit of snow up there, so he probably knows how to drive on slick roads as well.
I would imagine, yes. He probably sees a lot of snow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Brian, as we're watching drivers coming out of turn 3, going into the right-hander, at turn 4, it's interesting to watch how these drivers are adjusting their lines and how many of them are staying not only off of the curbing at the apex of turn 4, but they're actually staying about half a track width away from that curbing in order to set up for the left-hander at turn 5. And also trying to get the load. We saw yesterday in the dry how much of a load these drivers put on that outside, I guess it's not the outside, it's the left rear wheel as they transition from the exit of turn 3 going into turn 4. And certainly here today, you can see the drivers trying to minimize that load and trying to round off that second corner.
James Brookshire is back in the chat today, and today he put his entire 401k on Donnie Isley. So he is the betting man. I'm going to start calling him Jimmy the Greek.
That's right. After we already know that his daughter isn't going to be able to go to college this year because of Eric Cruz's performance yesterday. You'd think that Brookshire would learn. I just thought it was also interesting, Brian, as you asked Steve if all of these drivers are in the same boat today. And,
yes.
I thought that was...
I choose my words wisely, Greg.
I think you do. And oddly enough, we didn't get a response from one of our members in the chat here, the boat dude.
Look at that wiggle.
Yeah.
If you just were watching that going into turn 1, that Formula F car just got a huge wiggle and actually collected it and was able to move on. But there's still a lot of dampness going into turn 1.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that James Brookshire shares his bookie with me, because I went on scoresandodds.com last night and I could not find any of these lines.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll put that in the chat for us.
Yes.
So, no question.
Great.
No question.
We know the NFL and the NHL, they all have their online betting service now.
When DraftKings starts putting up the SCCA races, that's when we know we've made it.
Yeah, exactly.
Good name for it, too.
DraftKings, absolutely. I didn't even think about that. So.
All right, so Brian, here real quick, as we see the field really starting to stretch out here on course, but I think we definitely want to move back over to the battle for the lead in Formula V, as Steve mentioned, Russ Fredericks holding very, very tight to Donnie Isley in the lead for Formula V, and here they come now down into turn 6. Isley in the blue number 30, agitator Russ Fredericks directly behind. And we see that we've got, I think, Rob Aller trying to make his way through some slower traffic there, through some of the Formula V traffic with Ray Carmody, just getting past Ray Carmody, coming through turn 7, and Bill Styczynski then in 4th, just a little bit further behind. But great fight here, and we'll see how these Formula Vs deal with the weather. And it looks like, at least through the hairpin, Isley able to get the power down a little bit better than Russ Fredericks.
Yeah, and Team Carmody just popped in the chat. This is the first time Ray has been on Hoosier rain tires in 10 years. So that's an interesting little bit of information to see how he is able to keep up with Isley and Fredericks. They have them. We don't like the race in the rain, but when we have to do it, you got to have them. And sometimes you don't get to use them very often.
As long as it's not like when I use my rain tires and I pull them out of a bag after 10 years and they might as well be rocks.
There you go. There's your side-by-side battle for the lead. It looks like Russ Fredericks is probably going to be your leader next time by when they cross the line. I think he caught him just after the start-finish line. So it's showing Donnie Isley in first, but I believe it's actually now Russ Fredericks.
Yeah, and I'll say a 35-minute race feels like forever. A 35-minute race in the rain feels like an eternity. So, patience is going to be really key here.
Yeah, indeed. And, and I think my experience, I'm sure yours, is racing in the rain, your heart rate goes up a little bit higher, your level of expectation raises up, and you're just not sitting there, but you're pretty much hoping that you'll see that white flag come out the next time by, and it feels like the race goes on forever. Here, especially, and I'm sure as many of these drivers as they are, not locked nose to tail with another racer, and they may feel that they're on the track by themselves. As we watch Jonathan Kotek come out of the hairpin right now, you don't really have much reference except maybe your crew trying to calm you down over the course of this long race, as we've got 16 laps, or I believe right around 25 minutes remaining. So we've only been through 10 minutes of this race so far.
Yeah, and it looks like, don't count out Ray Carmody. He's showing up now. It looks like he's tracking faster than both the first two cars, and he is catching up in a hurry.
Absolutely. So, question from the chat is, does the rain and the bankings make it easier because the water is streaming down off the track? Yes, definitely. The banking will probably drive faster than the infield road course, and you can see different lines through the banking. And honestly, these cars compared to, you know, IndyCar, NASCAR aren't going so fast that they really have to worry about the banking here. They can pretty much step on it, and even in the rain, they can hustle through the banking pretty well.
Yeah, the big challenge for them, and I'm sure you'll agree, Steve, is you can see as they come off the oval, and the front straight on the oval has a slight banking to it as well. And when you then have to drop down into turn one, as you do put much more load on those outside tires, as we can see here, as both Fredericks and Isley try to navigate that turn 3, 4, and 5 complex. The weight transfer here in the damp on those very narrow tires certainly creates some issues.
Yeah, well, it looks like the front straight is really starting to dry out from where I'm standing from, but there are some big puddles in corner one. So, you know, you go from a drying track to puddles, and those guys are hydroplaning with the transition back onto the infield. So, yeah, that's very difficult to navigate. I'm sure they're looking to stay away from those puddles right now, but, you know, as the track continues to dry, they might be looking for puddles. So just, you know, with rain, you're just constantly analyzing the track. Every lap, you're looking at something different, and you're taking that information and you're remembering it the next lap, and you push it a little bit more. You say, you know, there's a puddle here and I hit that didn't feel good, and you move on the next lap, and it's just constantly changing. Every lap is completely different.
Yeah, it takes a real skill set. It's part of that racecraft we talked about in the last race when the rain started, to kind of learn how to learn the track. You know, when you're racing in the dry, you're racing the exact same racetrack every lap. When you're racing in the rain, you're racing a different racetrack every lap.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 14 to go here. Rob Allaire is your race leader in Formula Continental, followed by Robert Wright and Chris Sarnoff. Jonathan Kotek, your race leader in Formula F, followed by Daniel Thurgood. There we go, side by side for the lead again in Formula V. And it looks like the pass was made.
Indeed.
Which means that Russ Fredericks is now your leader in Formula V, followed by Donnie Isley.
That was actually Donnie Isley making the pass on Fredericks. Yeah,
got it.
The blue 30 Mysterian, probably Agitator, now getting ahead of Russ Fredericks and carried a lot of speed through that corner. You can see he's opened up now about 5 car lengths. As and Steve mentioned it, Ray Carmody starting to make up some ground here. Although Isley just ran his personal best lap there at a 1:48.8. Ray Carmody, that last time around, was actually a touch faster than our lead cars, and he is starting to close things down.
Yeah, Donnie got a really good draft on Russell down the straightaway, too, so that time is a little bit skewed.
Dave, great question or great comment, but the question I have is, those cars don't look like they're punching a big hole in the air, but they really are, aren't they?
Yeah, draft is so important in this class. You know, if you don't have a drafting partner on a track like this, you're in trouble. You know, and that's why you really have to work together. And that's what's so surprising about, you know, yesterday when Bill Styczynski was able to catch the pack. You know, driving a V, it's kind of like being on an escalator. You know, you have to stay in that group. You have to stay on the escalator. You can't do anything to go faster, but you can sure step off the escalator. And once you do, it's hard to catch back up.
What a great analogy. Do you like tracks like Homestead with the NASCAR big corners, or is it just something different and different is cool?
It depends what I'm driving. You know, for the FE2, it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. In a Formula V, it just depends on what your goal is. You know, I think the guys who are in the top, the peak of the class, you know, they would prefer the Mid-Ohios of the world. Get a track with less straightaways, less drafting. You know, when the best drivers in Formula V go to a track like Road America, you know, a 1 or 2 car pack turns into a 10 or 12 car pack, which they don't like. But again, if you're the 10th place car, you love tracks like that. So it just kind of depends on where you are. I think drafting makes it more exciting racing. I think, but if you're looking just to win races and you're the best driver out there, you would rather stay away from straightaways.
I did Daytona once in a Honda Civic ITC car, and I thought, man, this is going to be awesome, Daytona. But I got to tell you, going through the oval was just flat out boring. I was flat on the floor. Nothing was really happening. It was just like, let's get to turn one.
Yeah, we often make jokes that when we race Road America in a Formula V that we have time to stop for lunch on the straightaways.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, especially when you're going uphill.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, so 12 to go here, Greg, and it seems like other than Formula V, the field's just kind of decided where it's going to be at the moment.
Yeah, well, you know, I was watching just ahead of our Formula V field. I was watching this battle for second in Formula F with Dan Thurgood and James Morgan. Thurgood in 79, Morgan in the 01 machine, and then I think that Morgan had a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
They were about separated by about 2 car lengths, and then Morgan had a lap that was almost 20 seconds off of Thurgood, and so probably had an issue there in the infield, and he's now trying to recover. But at least for the time being, like Dan Thurgood is thoroughly locked into P2 in Formula F.
There's your Formula V class there. It looks like we may have had another swap for the lead. So Brian Styczynski is asking Steve, there's rumors that Zach and Andrew are going to jump up to FE2 with you this year. Is that what's going to happen?
I don't think it's going to be this year.
Okay.
Yeah, spoiler alert, Zach did buy a race car. So Zach is in possession of an FE2. Andy is not.
Okay.
And so, you know, I think just trying to work out the bugs and the kinks and, you know, it's difficult, right, to run 2 classes in SCCA. Obviously, it's a dream, but you know, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of preparation, it's a lot of travel, it's a lot of everything. And so, you know, I think Zach is going to drive the car some this year. I doubt you'll see him at any Super Tours this year, but I bet you see him next year.
All right.
Real quick,
Sorry,
James Brookshire says if all the brothers are going to FE2, he's going to go race a Miata.
Hey, so, Brian, that pass that we saw in Formula V was not the pass for the lead. That was the pass actually for second, as Ray Carmody has gotten around Russ Fredericks. So dropped the 23 car now back into third. Donnie Isley has managed to extend his lead on that pair, however. It looked to be almost about 10 car lengths when we saw them come out of 3 and 4 the last time, and we'll track that here the next time by.
I'm trying to figure out, Steve, am I seeing a dry line, or am I just seeing the regular race lines a different color from the non-race line? Because it doesn't look like these cars don't dissipate a ton of water, but it doesn't look like there's a big dry line forming just yet.
Yeah, it depends on what side of the track you're on. You know, it looks like conditions are varied everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing, Brian, as the drivers come out of 7 and make their way to the hairpin. Still some big rooster tails, even when the drivers are on line. And I think a lot of that owes to the fact that, you know, as we talked about, you know, on a wet race, almost every single lap is an experiment. And as you know, we haven't seen where many of these drivers are taking that traditional line yet, and they just haven't had an opportunity to really try things out. As we watch here, there's that battle in Formula V as Donnie Isley leads this pack through turns 6 and 7, and there you go, Ray Carmody, and looks like the red 23 of Russ Fredericks starting to fall a bit off of Carmody's pace there. That last time by was almost 2 full seconds off of Ray Carmody's lap time.
Yeah, I gotta say, for me and from a lot of the other V community that I've talked to, we just want to give a shout out to Robert Allaire for just being so courteous to our guys here, you know, allowing them to race, and the amount of time that he backed up yesterday, and it looks like today as well, just allowing those guys to race is it's awesome. I'll just say he's earned a lot of points in the V community.
Yeah, how worried was the V community when they lumped Formula Continental into this race yesterday?
You know, I think we're all realistic, right? I think we know what the numbers are at this race. You know, I don't think you can have 5 cars at a race and be making demands. And I think, you know, the Continentals were very gracious, and they said that they were a guest in this class and that they were going to be courteous, and they've definitely held up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, really good for that as well. So, want to remind everybody we've got one more race before lunch coming up next, Spec Miata. always an exciting race, and it will be even more so with the damp conditions here. So stay with us. We've got that one race before lunch, and then we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back after lunch, we've got our final 3 races of the weekend. 9 laps to go here. Rob Allaire is our leader. Second place is Robert Wright in Formula Continental. Third place in Formula Continental is Chris Charno. And then your first place car in Formula F, Jonathan Kotek, he has dropped down to 4th place overall. So you've got your 3 Continentals in order, but there's a good gap between all of them. So really no racing for position there in that class for the podium right now.
Okay, Brian.
I should say the best race on the track, of course, like yesterday, Formula V, Donnie Isley, Ray Carmody, and Russ Fredericks, your top 3 cars there. Bill Styczynski's dropped back some, so he's not in the mix here for the podium in Formula V.
Yeah, it looks like a car just pulled off. I wonder if that's Ray Carmody. I didn't see him come around.
Well, we will look at
Yeah, I was actually just going to say that, Brian, as we watched the cars coming out of the hairpin. Just saw Donnie Isley, and then quite a bit further back was that red 23 of Russ Fredericks, and so that may
if we
indeed
can
be
go
Carmody.
back to that previous camera real quick, I think the car is on driver's left there in the little gap there.
At the cutout, yeah.
At the cutout, yep. That is where that car is pulled off, and once the cars start crossing the start-finish line, we'll probably see, we're going to see Ray Carmody drop down through the order here. So, very, very good eyes there, Mr. Whitston.
Yeah, what a shame. That was really shaping up to be a good race.
It was. Yeah,
It was.
definitely. As Carmody was definitely closing things down on Isley the last couple of laps.
Well, so now it's going to be up to Russ Fredericks to be able to catch up. He's 4.5 seconds back from Donnie Isley last time across the line. If he's gonna get something done here, he's gonna have to do it pretty quickly with only 8 laps to go.
Yeah, that's a tall order. That's definitely a tall order.
At 4.5 seconds back, has he lost the draft, Steve?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, if you are in a winged car, the draft is definitely shows up longer. You know, maybe within 2 seconds or so, you can get a little bit of a sniff of a draft. But in a V, if you're more than a second, you know, it starts going away very, very quickly. Obviously, the closer you are, if you're a tenth or 2 behind the car in front of you, that draft is significant. But, you know, when you start getting past a second, the draft might be there a little bit, but it's not much. And, you know, really, unfortunately, these other mixed cars in this group, you know, like when the Continentals drive by or even the Ford, you know, the Vs don't get much of a draft just because of the speed difference.
Yeah, they're probably going by so fast that you can't even tuck by.
You can get just a hair of a draft on the Ford, but, you know, those Continentals, when they come by, it's so quick, it just doesn't do anything.
No.
All right, so we've got 7 laps or 11 minutes remaining, and this is, again, I think another race that's probably going to end on time, Brian, based on how many minutes we have remaining. And again, go ahead.
I was saying, I know we have Team Carmody in the draft or in the chat here with us. Hopefully, they could let us know what happened to that car, to Ray's car. We'll wait to see if we can get some word on that.
Do you think this is like Spec MX5, where all the drivers have their cell phones in the car with them and start sending text messages? No.
Well, if anyone would get that kind of information, it'd be Trevor.
It'd be Trevor.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, wanted to welcome Brum Racing here. Had some questions, and he's checking in from the UK. And to answer your question, we are going to be at Sebring International Raceway. It's going to be broadcast right here on the SCCA official YouTube channel. It is the very first stop in the 10-weekend SCCA Hoosier Racing Tire Super Tour. And definitely join us throughout the year and throughout the season for that.
So I was talking about 2 things. Ray Carmody, blown motor. That's what I'm seeing here. And Russ Fredericks has closed the gap to 2.9 seconds behind Donnie Isley. So somehow he is bringing this thing back. With 6 laps to go, he's going to have to take a half a second out of each lap to be able to get to the rear bumper by the last. So, and it looks like the rain has coming back here.
It also looks like Jonathan Kotek just pulled
Kotek is just pulled. Yeah, I was just going to say the 108 machine of Kotek pulling down the pit lane. He was your Formula F leader, and yesterday Kotek was your winner in Formula F.
That's strange too, because he's under his own power and he had such a lead. You think if it wasn't something major, he would have stayed out and just kind of limped the car around.
Right.
Sure. Question in the chat about what kind of tires that these that the V's are on. They're really skinny tires on old VW Beetle wheels. Most of the drivers are either on Goodyears or Hoosiers, and this is not a spec tire class, so there is some choices to make there. But that is what those little cars are on right now.
So, Steve, here's a question, especially in damp conditions like this: disc brakes or drum brakes?
I think pretty much the entire field's on disc brakes at this point.
Are they?
I think for the Indy runoffs was the last year that we all ran the drum brakes. I think we were the last ones to switch over. There might be a couple people still in the field running those drum brakes. As far as I know, there's really no one running seriously in Super Tours that are running the disc brakes anymore. And really, I don't think it was as much of an advantage as people thought they were. We did very well on the run on the disc brakes. I mean, Andrew won the runoffs on drum brakes against everyone else that was on discs. But it is nice because it's a lot more maintenance free. You don't have to adjust the brakes, set the brakes every single session. You also have a more consistent pedal. With the drum brakes, you'd get brake fade. You get a long pedal by the end of the race, and so. It is nice as a driver to be able to go to the brake and know that there's going to be a consistent brake.
I do remember in our two brief stints in Formula V, the pain in the tuck as it was to get those little spinners and adjust those brakes every session. So, and for those who don't know, for decades these cars ran stock VW Beetle drum brakes, and I think really the motivation to switch to the discs was because it was hard to get parts, right?
I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
As far as the brakes, I think there's an abundance of brakes. I think if you went to any V driver who's been doing this for 20, 25 years, he's got a pile of brakes in the corner that he doesn't use anymore. I think it was some of the other parts that are more difficult to get. Some of the other engine parts and some of the other components that way are, some of that stuff is more difficult to come by. But there are still a lot of Formula Vs that are racing around, so there are parts. You just gotta know who to find them. It seems like a lot of these V drivers kind of hoard parts in their garage, so you got to figure out who's got them. There's some.
It's like CRX races,
Bag and plead and keep asking, and eventually they come out.
Yeah.
All right, so Brian, we were just watching here, and they're coming down to the hairpin right now. As Russ Fredericks has now halved that gap to Donnie Isley, about 1.2, and I'm betting it's a lot closer than 1.2 seconds now as they come out of turn 8, out of the hairpin, and onto the oval as we have either 4 laps or 6 minutes remaining, and it's kind of now, I think, a toss-up as to whether it's going to be this race is going to finish on time or on laps.
Yeah, Russell Fredericks definitely in the draft at this point.
So that's going to make it very interesting. 4 laps to go with 5 minutes. I don't know that we're going to get all 4 laps in here. We may end up on the clock here because the cars have had to drive a little bit slower because of the wet conditions. But there is your Formula V lead, and yeah, you're right. Fredericks right there. Might even be able to try to make a move going into turn 1 here. And it looks like he's thinking about ducking out, but we'll see it all right there. Here they come right into our living room. Fredericks took a time this time by, kind of going to take the measure of Isley. Kind of now that he's right there, we can kind of learn where Isley is good and where he's good. And with the closing laps of this race, Steve, do you want to be in first place going into the last lap, or do you want to be at second?
No, if I was Russell Fredericks, I would sit right on the gearbox of Isley. I would wait to see a white flag, and I would cross him, around the banking, across the finish line. I would not want to be in first place right now.
Well, there you have it from a guy who knows how to drive these cars fast. Robert Allaire, still our race leader in Formula Continental. He's got a 10-second lead over Robert Wright, who has a 14-second lead over Chris Charnois. Keith Joslin, our only Formula 6 car, is in 4th. Then you've got your two Formula F cars, Daniel Thorogood and James Morgan, but Thorogood's got a 40-second lead over second place. So that's where it stands right now. The most important, most interesting battle on the racetrack coming right into our view. That's Donnie Isley in 1st, and then right behind him, Russell Fredericks. And this is the battle we're going to follow here for the last 3 laps of this race, Greg.
All right, here as they come out of the hairpin, and noticing the slight difference in exit coming out of the hairpin there is Donnie Isley certainly trying to diamond off that corner and get a straight run onto the oval, and it looks like Russ Fredericks maybe rounding the corner off just a little bit, but here we come once again through NASCAR 3 as some of our Formula Continental racers going around the outside of that Formula V races. The V's obviously trying to stick down to the very bottom of the oval and take up run as little ground as possible. And Donnie Isley, your leader, as they cross the stripe with 2 laps to go. And Brian, from looking at the clock, I think we might actually be able to get the full 22 laps in.
Yeah, it does look like the track's obviously getting faster. Chris Charnock just went purple, fastest lap of the day, 1:29.6. So they're definitely being able to get some better speeds here as we get a little deeper into this race. Rain may have came back a little bit, but nothing like it was before, and it looks like it may have actually slowed down again. I'm not seeing any of the puddles with raindrops in them right now.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat, or a supposition in the chat as to whether or not our next group of race car drivers are Spec Miata drivers. Oh, Russ Fredericks has an issue. Rear end comes around under braking going into turn number 6. And that may spell the end of that fight. And it's given Donnie Isley about a 15 car length advantage as he comes into the hairpin for what will probably be the second to last time. And there you go, white flag in the air for Robert Aller, your overall leader and leader in Formula Continental.
Well, that's a big mistake, or even getting caught out by the wet track there by Russell Fredericks. But just as easy as that happened to Russell Fredericks, the same thing could happen to Donnie Isley. So that's why we race all the way to the finish here.
That's it. Yeah. And so, Brian, I was going to say, I think the question in the chat and that there is for our Spec Miata drivers for our last race before lunch, do they go with the dry tires or do they go with the wet tires? And I immediately think back to the runoffs 2 years ago, the 2022 runoffs, where we had those mixed weather conditions over the course of the race, and I think the majority of the drivers went out on dry weather tires, and it made for some exciting racing.
Yeah, I think if you ever have a question as far as if I should go on dries or if you should go on wets, I usually tend towards the dries, especially in these conditions right now. It looks like the sun's starting to come out. If you went out on wet tires right now for a 35-minute race, you're not going to have tires on the car unless it starts raining again.
Yeah, when we had the weather map up earlier, it looked as though the weather pattern was probably moving through. And there you go. You can see, yes, there are a number of clouds out there, but you can definitely see quite a bit of, grayish sky here at Homestead. Yeah, I think by the end of a 35-minute Spec Miata race, I think a lot of drivers would be looking for tires. As the checkered flag is out and taking the win is Robert Aller, driver the number 52. Formula Continental out of Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan. 2-time national champion, runner-up this year to his son, Nolan, and he takes the sweep this weekend here in Formula Continental. Robert Wright will finish 2nd. Chris Charno 3rd in Formula Continental. And we're checking to see as they cross the line, Keith Joslin, our sole racer in Formula 600. And he is going to finish 4th overall, runs his fastest lap on the final lap. Taking the win in Formula F is going to be Dan Thorogood out of Lighthouse Point, probably out of Miami, Florida. James Morgan will finish 2nd, and looks like Jonathan Kotek, who again had to retire early, will finish 3rd. And then in Formula V, there he is crossing the line, taking the win. In Formula V, Donnie Isley out of Fletcher, North Carolina in his agitator. Russ Fredericks, we should see him come across here momentarily, should finish 2nd. And I believe, even though
I
he
think
is
he was only 3 seconds back, so I think he's already crossed the line.
quite possibly, there we go.
Yeah, it looks like he crossed the line and pulled directly into the pits after crossing the finish line. So I'm wondering if he had a mechanical issue as well.
Yeah, quite possible there. And so finishing third in Formula V, although unfortunately he had to watch the last couple of laps from the sidelines, Ray Carmody out of Horseheads, New York.
All right, I'm looking at the radar real quick, and it does not look like we got any heavy rain in the area, and I think anything that is in the area will not bother us for the next race. I've got a little closer up version of this on my. Okay, I've got a little more close up version here on my computer in my studio, and I think we'll definitely be good for Spec Miata, but who knows what's going to happen later on this afternoon.
There's a lot of weather following through.
Yeah. So,
excellent. So I want to thank Steve Whitston. Now, Steve, of course, you're going to be on track a little bit later today, starting fourth in Formula Enterprises 2. What's your thought process going into this afternoon's race?
Well, it's obviously going to be weather dependent. I'm kind of on the fence as far as if I want it to be dry or wet. But I think it's going to be a good race. We had a really good, clean race yesterday, which is really great. The weather has been perfect, and other than this morning, obviously, but hopefully that continues for everyone. And it's just really cool to be at the track. It's such a beautiful facility, and it's nice to be in Florida and not be in cold weather.
And I assume we're going to see you next weekend at Sebring as well?
You will. I will not be driving Formula V next weekend. I will be driving just the FE2, but we do plan on driving the Vs at NOLA, so hopefully we get some other V drivers to come.
all right, well, let's do this right now, Greg. Let's invite Steve. If you want to come up for Formula V next weekend at either of the races, you're welcome to come up and join us.
That sounds great. I'll do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Steve Whitston, thanks a lot. He's Greg Ginsburg. I'm Brian Belansky. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Spec Miata.